फोटो दिखा फोटो ही पूछ रहा था ऑर्डर
then Anton, then Lewis, then Dr. Thomas, then Chandrasekhar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have joined for this session on carbon credits being key to net zero, and I have a distinguished panel here. Before we go ahead, I am the moderator for today's. I am Siddhant Gupta. I'm Vice President and Head of Business Development at EKI Energy Services Limited. We happen to be one of the world's largest developers and traders of carbon credits in the voluntary markets. We are also present in more than 40 countries with more than 1,000 projects for which we are doing active asset management as far as carbon is concerned. I am joined by a very elite panel here. And on my left, I have Anton Svetov. Anton is the Associate Director for Policy at ICVCM. He is very instrumental in providing policy support and expertise to the assessment process and further development of the framework. Anton has been a policy professional with experience in research, consulting, and international negotiations, focusing on the economics of climate change and global sustainability. He has led climate negotiations in the UN and G20 with a focus on carbon markets and has engaged extensively with multilateral organizations globally, particularly focusing on Eurasia and Asia Pacific. He had worked in think tanks and research institutions to produce evidence based policy analysis and strategic advice to governments, international organizations, and private entities. Let's give him a round of applause and warm welcome. On his left is Luis Panicelli. He is the VCM Policy Director at ITA. Luis had officially joined ITA a little time ago in the new VCM Policy Director role. He takes a key role in advancing the global VCM and in supporting the ICRAO accreditation program. He is result-oriented climate change professional experienced in international negotiations and stakeholders engagement. He's an expert in carbon markets, RED Plus, and climate change mitigation with a consensus mind and motivation for action. Deeply involved in developing climate finance instruments, he has coordinated the RED Plus and carbon markets team in Argentina and was lead negotiator for Argentina and the ABU group on matters related to Article 6, advocating for the integrity of market mechanisms aligned with the Paris Agreement. He is a member of the roster of experts for the Article 6.4 supervisory body and an expert reviewer on RED Plus and Article 6 for UNFCCC. With a solid technical background, he also contributes to the science of climate change as expert to the IPCC. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. Uh, We also have Rohit Kumar, and with over 2 decades of experience, he is the Secretary General of Carbon Markets Association of India, dedicated to net zero future. His extensive background includes roles in project development, policy formation, project execution, market communications, environment sustainability, and SDG implementation at the grassroots level. Formerly associated with the Chamber of Commerce, he organized initiatives like Swachh Bharat campaign. He is recognized by the President, Vice President of India, and the United Nations for his various sustainability initiatives. Rohit Kumar is a leader in B2B, B2C, and B2G initiatives. His name is also registered twice in Limca Book of Records for the biggest green drive initiatives, My Earth, My Duty. A round of applause for him. One of the industry stalwarts, and he needs no introduction, Mr. Chandrasekhar Sinha. He is the global lead for carbon markets and finance at the World Bank. His current work focuses on development of Paris-aligned carbon markets, leveraging climate finance for World Bank operations, including deepening engagement with clients and maximizing synergies of different climate change initiatives of the climate change group at the World Bank. A round of applause for him. So, the topic today is a tricky one because there have been divided opinions on whether carbon credits are key to net zero or not, with contrasting views coming from different fractions and different articles or sub-articles of Article 6 suggesting different mechanisms on the road to net zero. Whether or not carbon credits do hold importance is a question that has been asked many times and answered probably even more than that. So to start with that, let me ask Anton on his views on the fact that there has been a lot of controversy recently about the quality of credits in the voluntary carbon market. How do you think that these criticisms are justified and how widespread the problem actually is?
Thank you very much, Sirhan. I hope you can hear me well. I can hear myself very well. So, and thank you for convening this panel. I think it's a very important point in time where we are having this conversation, because not only because we are in the presence of negotiators attempting to move forward Article 6 and create a viable framework for a UN carbon market, but also because the markets are moving very fast. And clearly, I mean, this has been the view you presented and the framing of the question has been prevalent in the market, but really we are in the presence of a major effort from all sides to reform the VCM. Now, and this involves integrity initiatives such as ICVCM, the Integrity Council, which I represent here today, and the market itself, the market participants, the project developers, the countries, the regulators, the international organizations. I think many of them are focused on how do we make sure that carbon credits are a real tool to deliver private finance to the developing world. That is what they are there ultimately to do. And what we are doing at the Integrity Council is we are bringing about the first consensus framework for understanding and agreeing on what quality looks like in the carbon market. It's an integrity threshold that in the form of a label will allow buyers and investors and project developers and regulators to clearly understand what is good in the market, what quality looks like. Now, the way we're doing this is we have, through a elaborate and consultative process, arrived at something called the core carbon principles, the CCPs. And those are 10 principles that I think anyone in this room or anyone interested in carbon markets could recite. I think all the right things, right? Robust quantification, additionality, good governance, and the such. But what we also bring to this is what we call an assessment framework, which is a collection of requirements for carbon crediting programs, sometimes also called standards or registries, and for carbon crediting methodologies. And we're now applying this framework to assess the existing independent carbon crediting mechanisms in the market. They apply to us, they apply their program rules, they apply their methodologies, which they choose to apply. And we then go through a elaborate and consultative and multi-stakeholder process to decide whether they are eligible for the CCP label or not. And there are two tracks. As I mentioned, one is the program itself, so the program rules and program level rules, and the methodologies themselves. And once a carbon crediting program is deemed CCP eligible, and it has methodologies that are deemed CCP eligible, then credits issued under those methodologies by those programs can get the CCP label. Now, we are still in the process of assessing. It's an ongoing endeavor, and we have approved the first 5 programs, and those are the big 5 programs in the market. So Vera Gold Standards, ACR, CR, and our trees. And we have approved several methodologies, and we are very much in the process of completing that assessment of methodologies. The first categories of carbon credits that can get a CCP label include ozone depletion substances, landfill gas, leakage detection and repair, and we have just recently announced the first decision on forestry methodologies, so 3 methodologies in the RED Plus space, but more decisions are coming in the next month, so stay tuned. And what we hope this is going to do is this is going to bring confidence and standardization to the market. People can identify what's good, they can know what they're buying, and can be confident in the quality of what they are buying. And I guess I won't take too much time and we can go into a discussion. But we think there is now an understanding of what good looks like in the market. And as long as companies invest in those carbon credits, we are providing the confidence that these credits represent meaningful mitigation with all the necessary safeguards and co-benefits that should be there.
Right, that's great to note, Anton, and that's really an appreciable effort that your organization is putting up. But let's move back a couple of months and let's look at how the situation was then. And I have a question related to that. Probably Louis would be the best person to answer that. So companies were being accused of greenwashing and buying credits which were phantom or probably did not live up to the expectations that they promised. But having said that, do you think that it is appropriate to attack companies for voluntary investing in reducing their climate footprint?
Hello? Hello? Yeah, that's working. Good afternoon to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much to the Indian Carbon Market Association for combining this session. And for this hard start of the of the debate is really straight to the point and very good to have these conversations. I wanted to touch on the quality issue, no? To start, maybe taking a step back, no, on your question, and tries to raise the issue that the quality and the integrity of the market is not something new. No, it's not something that we are addressing now at this point, raising initiatives actually to respond not to some of the critics now that have been raised now with respect to how credits and projects are being developed. No, at IETA, for example, we have ICROA. This is an initiative that has more than a decade here in the sector, where we have actually two types of activities mainly. One is the accreditation of service providers and project developers, no, that need to comply with a code of conduct. No, this is one of the parts of the integrity of the market. No, so there are initiatives on the supply side. No, the excellent job our colleagues here from the ICVCM are doing, no, on evaluating the programs, the methodologies. No, but we need to put all the things into a puzzle. No, the integrity of the market, it's about different parts. No, that it complies. No, project developers, suppliers, no, intermediaries, traders, no, buying, selling credits, and all the supply chains that involves also the buyers. No, so we are also thinking on how buyers are also thinking about the quality and the integrity of their activities, no, involving the types of claims, no, that they can do, no, on behalf of the type of credits that they are using, and which is actually the use cases of these credits. No, so this is first reflection on how we're thinking now about integrity. So it's not a new issue, and I think we're actually taking steps in the right direction. No, moving more and more into having more robust methodologies. No, more initiatives getting into the market and trying to fit all the parts of the integrity, you know, of the supply chain, you know, of what is producing a credit.
Right. Thank you for your thought, Luis, there. So we have essentially discussed on what was specifically the reason for the need of an organization like ICVCM intervening, and how things have matured from there. But from Mr. Rohit Kumar, what I would want to understand is, since he represents an industry body, how does he feel that industries are accepting the idea of enhanced scrutiny in carbon markets?
So thank you, EKI, for giving this platform. And I think this is the right forum where I'd like to express my industry concerns and industry issues. So while we really endorse that integrity part, we really support the integrity part, but at the same time, industry has to face multiple challenges going to decarbonize. So industry is a little confused about carbon market, about integrity, about labeling, about the different principle altogether. So because they have to not only decarbonize through scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, technology integration, but at the same time, they have multiple challenges while they are going to project development. Unfortunately, they find that new rules and regulations are coming. So that is really suffering industry at large. So I think we should have a we should be very clear in terms of principle and policies. So while we are not touching right now scope 3 emission per se, because we are not touching MSME right now. So that is going to be a biggest challenge for industry for decarbonization when we are adding more and more principles, more policies, more regulations every day. While we are very happy that in the COP29, parties had approved to Article 6.4 policies, I think that will give a complete uniform approach to the world. And the country like India, where India has already taken leadership in the CDM space with a 17% global market share. And in the VCM market, we have across 30% share. So I think that Article 6.4 approval will really boost up the market. We don't need any more labeling. Even if we have labeling, we are labeling to support industry, we are support the MSMEs, and this is going to cause a major challenge is they are facing right now as we are really concerned. So that's why CMAI is working nowadays in the space of capacity enhancement for industries. I will also teaching them about scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, making them aware about this in this space, what are the challenges are going to happen. And we are also coming with a knowledge report on the regular basis of time, and so that industry should know which path they have to go, because a lot of changes are happening. Even in the country like India, we have multiple markets right now, like a compliance market is going to be ready, which is going to help India to achieve net zero goal and also meeting the NDC target. While we are also coming with a voluntary carbon market, where the new sectors are adding, more methodologies are coming, and all those methodology has to be aligned with national and international framework. And voluntary carbon market is already there. So there are a lot of changes happening, and I think VCMI and ICVCM is supporting in terms of integrity. But our concern is that those integrity quotient should not hamper the developing country climate finance requirement in coming days, because they need enough funding, enough support. And that is the reason that we are in the COP29, and we hope that they will understand and support Global South in this mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit Kumar. Now, moving on to Synergy. Article 6 is definitely welcome, and it bridges the gap between the voluntary and compliance markets. But let's face the fact that majority of trades happening or are being discussed on this panel are still on the voluntary markets. In the view of that, some organizations such as SBTi and VCMI have been directing companies to focus on their scope 3 emissions within their value chains. What are the strengths and weaknesses of this approach in your understanding, sir?
Thanks again for the invitation to be on this panel. I think, first of all, it should be clear that carbon markets are a means of channeling climate finance, and they always require a source of demand. And the key constraint in the growth of the carbon market has been the absence of clarity of demand. Now, if you look at the demand or the opportunity of channeling private sector finance through carbon markets as a source of demand, then there is need to be there is need to have clarity around use cases, because the key challenge, other than the supply side integrity, which Anton talked about, has been on the concern of greenwashing by corporates, because the concern there is that they do not take enough action within their own scope 1 emissions in particular, and resort to the use of carbon markets to buy cheap credits in order to report on their net zero progress. So I think one thing to recognize is that scope 3 emissions offer an opportunity for creating demand to channel private capital for NDC implementation in host countries, right? That is the rationale for the use of the voluntary market, and to recognize that compliance market will offer opportunity for maximizing the monetization, because the compliance market linked to compliance regimes such as, say, emission trading system, the way Korea allows Article 6 units to be used against compliance requirements under its emission trading system, or Singapore allows the use of Article 6 units for offsetting the carbon tax obligations. You know, the two forms of carbon pricing can be offset by international crediting mechanism. They offer a source of demand on the compliance side, and typically are much higher value demands. So Singapore, for instance, would allow the offset of its carbon tax, and the carbon tax would be 50 Singapore dollars very soon. That's a much higher price signal than the average in the voluntary market. So to recognize that scope 3 flexibility is a possibility for channeling or creating demand and private sector action in terms of contributing climate finance. Now, how do you address the challenge of greenwashing? I think VCMI has made proposals for scope 3 flexibility, which requires progress along scope 1 and 2 and compliance to a company's stated goals on scope 1 and 2 in order to utilize carbon markets for a part of their scope 3 emissions for a given amount of time, with the understanding that this catalyzes and accelerates action by the corporate sector in contributing to the NDCs of developing countries. So, there are estimates out there as to how this could contribute significantly to climate action and therefore would be the source of demand and private capital, while compliance markets would be the source of public capital, governments utilizing Article 6.
That is thought-provoking. The voluntary markets being catered to by the for-profit organizations or individuals, and the compliance markets being catered to by the governments. Having said that, I have a question for Louis. Do you feel that there's sufficient funding from richer countries? And if it is not achieved, what are the options for providing more funding to the global south, especially in the context of the fact that there is still a very huge gap between the voluntary markets and the compliance markets?
Yeah, thanks. I would say first that there is a huge gap between the Paris goals and what governments are pledging in their indices. And I think we should recognize this because we are very far away from where we're supposed to be right now at 2030 and to reach net zero in 2050. So here I think that we should recognize that there is a need for extra finance, independently of what countries will hopefully be agreeing on the global goals for finance, hopefully at this COP. That will not be enough to comply with NDCs, to increase the ambitions of the NDC to reach the Paris Agreement. So for sure, there will be a need for extra capital. This capital can come from the private sector, can come from the use of credits to enhance the ambitions in the NDCs. And this can apply to the global south, but also to the global north. I'm seeing that this mechanism for carbon markets are quite restrictive in terms of being used only by big companies that have the financial means to be able to buy high quality credits. And I think there's a way to expand this market, to allow also having compliance markets in the global south. How can we create crediting mechanisms that are adapted for the global south conditions, have third-party verifiers that can actually be in the global south, how we can reduce also the cost for producing these credits. Because actually, if not, the situation will be that there will be a very restrict demand for the carbon markets, restricted to rich countries and rich companies. So we think that we should try to expand this, to allow the use of the carbon markets, also for small and medium-sized companies, for companies that are actually also in the global south. But this is a new ecosystem that needs to be developed. There are some countries there. India is taking the lead, for example, Colombia, Mexico, There are some countries that are trying to push in this direction, but I think there is still much more still to do, not to create the capacities and the infrastructures in the global south, not to allow to create carbon pricing instruments, and carbon markets, that allow countries in the global south, use the carbon markets, for the benefits of the achievement of their indices,
Right. Just to ensure that there's a little more participation from the audience before I move on to Mr. Rohit Kumar again with the next question. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Please go ahead. I'm coming to you, sir. Ma'am, it would be great if you can just introduce yourself and then direct the question if you want to ask it to any specific panelist.
I think it's to the panel in general. My name is Angelika. I'm working for Volkswagen Climate Partner. We are a small co-project developer and co-financer. And I think we've all seen the disruptions in the voluntary carbon market recently, which you described. We appreciate very much the initiatives of the ICVCM and also of IETA and other institutions. However, our feeling is that working on the standards and the quality of the projects itself or themselves is not enough at the moment, because what we see is a massive distrust on the demand side. And I think we can only recover this distrust if we take stakeholders by the hand and explain them in detail what's going on, what is a good quality project. I think labeling is helping, but it's not enough. The loss of trust is too big. And my question to you is there any action going on already or in preparation to make this happen, taking stakeholders, especially on the demand side, but also in terms of media, by the hand and explaining in detail what is the road that we are on together? It's clear that not everything is perfect now. We are in a process and not on the finishing line, but I think it's incredibly important to explain in detail in an easy way so that non-participants of the market understand.
Right, fair enough. Anton, would you want to take this one? Because this is pertaining to inclusion of stakeholders. And since you are driving the indicators specifically on the supply side, probably this would be of interest to you.
I can attempt that. So I mean, you're absolutely right. There's for the market to regain confidence and trust, it has to happen on all sides. And I think Luis outlined the sort of the chain there. So it's all the way supply, intermediary, demand, stakeholders that are on the ground, communities involved, regulators, the media, of course, and really. I mean, it's not an easy issue, right? It's not, I mean, it's a very complex matter to explain to wide audiences. Which doesn't make it less important to do that, and even more important to that. And we really need all the sides of it. I mean, I think one of the important elements here is that the institutions and the players and the stakeholders involved at each and every part of it, they sort of become driven by the successes of each other, right? And this becomes a virtuous cycle, if you may. When buyers or intermediaries see that there is such a thing as a carbon credit where they are confident in the quality, they might become a little bit more active and engaging and more willing to engage with those credits. And they might introduce frameworks for using those credits in a more bold way and generate demand. And the other way around, if project developers see that there is demand for a particular type of credit or particular level of quality for credits. They will become engaged in project activities. They might engage in generation. The same with intermediaries. The role there is very high. They're the ones bridging the supply and the demand. The exchanges, when they see that there's potential for a specific type of asset to be more interesting to them, they might introduce integrity frameworks to make sure that those assets are transacted and the price is discovered in a more equitable and potentially interesting for the market way. So, and I mean, there is a very wide, I think, community trying very hard to bring that integrity and bring all the stakeholders together. The World Bank is doing a lot of work there to try and get the right people in the room. And the explanation work is very important. And things like standardization and labeling as well, and having these umbrella initiatives is very important to sort of signal clearly, and of course government buy-in as well, signal clearly that this is high integrity, this is not so much, we trust this, we are confident in this. And it's I mean, these organizations have to trust it as well. So I think it's mutually reinforcing mechanism.
Yes, Luis, please.
Yeah, if I may jump in on this one. We have a saying in Argentina that says that when you get burned with milk, you see a cow and you cry. That means that it will take time, no, to gain trust and confidence again, no. This is the real situation. We need to acknowledge there are a lot of efforts, as Anton is saying, on how to rebuild this trust, no, but human beings are like this, no, they need time, no, to redigest. We are trying to redesign the ecosystem of the market, no, how is it working, how it's being integrated, no, the voluntary side with the compliance market, with the Article 6, trying to put everything together. And also there is a main role now on governmental regulations. No, there are, for example, carbon principles being launched by the UK, by the US. No, governments trying to embrace the use of carbon markets, no, as a tool, no, for fighting climate change. And this is maybe a good signal on how we can actually try to increase the demand. No. But the reality is that it will take some time until all these efforts, no, that everybody's doing, no, to assess the methodology, to increase integrity, to try to also recognize projects or credits that are bad, no, because this is also a reality, and we need to be transparent with that. We need to acknowledge, no, and we need to try to move in this good direction, no, of improving the integrity. And regaining the trust, no, on carbon markets as a tool to fight climate change.
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
So the reason not to kind of this is a fundamental problem in the carbon market right now, right? The issue of trust and the challenge that the narratives tend to be captured by the negative part of the story, forgetting the dominant, part of the market doing great work. That the media narratives tend to get captured by the negative rather than focus on the large amount of very good projects that are there. So the points that I think Anton and Luis are indicating is very important, that there has to be a process by which all of us engaged in the carbon market are cognizant of the need for integrity, but also to communicate that integrity is a journey, as they say, not a destination, right? You will always have improvement, and therefore both ICVCM and VCMI have started what is called a continuous improvement program. Many of the problem projects that have been identified are projects which were initiated a decade ago, and are being judged by today's standard without fully recognizing that today, many of those programs or projects would not have gone through the system. So for us to have very clear narrative on the effort on our side, those of us who are working in this field, to continuously improve, continuously learn, continuously move forward, to increase the integrity, to become better at monitoring, reporting, verification, I think has to be communicated. So it's also about the narrative that yes, we need to openly acknowledge the shortcomings, but at the same time, there's no need to be totally defensive about, the unfairness of targeting a few bad examples without recognizing that, majority of the activities are doing real good. And one of the ways of doing that is to have more voices from the global south, people who benefit from these projects or communities that benefit from these projects, the indigenous communities that participate in these projects tell their side of the story as well. Because again, to emphasize, if you do not recognize that carbon markets are a source of climate finance, they are intended to accelerate climate action where they would not otherwise have occurred, we are missing the whole objective of this. This is not about reducing emissions or making it easier for a corporate in the OECD to meet their commitments easier. It is about catalyzing climate action where it would not have occurred, and making sure that more climate finance flows.
Right. Thank you, sir. The question was at least as difficult as the task itself, if not more, but was, well comprehended and addressed by the panel. We'll move on to you, sir. You had some question.
Siddharth, I don't have a question. I have a comment to make on the first question that you asked, if you give me 5 minutes to speak. I'm Anil Johari. I represent a new carbon registry in India, but the comment I'm going to make is from my experience as Chief of Indian Accreditation Body for several years and being part of CDM Accreditation Panel for the last 17 years, and right now part of Article 6.4 Accreditation Panel as well. I think any program, voluntary program that you're talking about has 3 pillars on which it is built. 1, the basic standard, the carbon standard. B, the process of evaluation of compliance, which is validation verification. And 3, the people who validate or verify, the competence part. So this is standards, this is validation verification, and this is accreditation. These are the 3 pillars. Despite these 3 pillars being good, there can be greenwashing, there can be false claims. Sustainability will certainly remain vulnerable to exaggerated or false claims, will remain vulnerable to complicity of verifiers with the industry to show claims. So that is another part. But the first part is, are these 3 parts robust? If the standard is not good, howsoever robust your evaluation process may be or competence may be, outcomes will not be delivered because standard is bad. But if the standard is good, but your evaluation process is bad, you still have a bad outcome. Standard is good, process is good, but the competence is not okay, you still have a bad outcome. So all 3 have to function together. Now, the problem, as I see in voluntary market from my experience, many of the voluntary programs rely on CDM accreditation. Automatically, a DOE of CDM is eligible to be a validator verifier. Now, these people have not understood either the strength of CDM accreditation or the limitation of CDM accreditation. I know, being part of CDM, that CDM assessments do not cover any program other than CDM's own activity. So if you are using a CDM accredited DOE automatically, and you do not supplement with a system of supervising its work, your work, the work that it does for you, you are in for trouble. So now if Vera says that CDM accreditation is not good enough, we want to do something more, my answer is you never understood what CDM accreditation was. You failed to do your own part, and now you put the blame somewhere else. So that's the first part. Second part is that we are relying on CDM accreditation standards. Incidentally, is very robust, very prescriptive, very, very robust. I have been involved in drafting it since 2007. The second part is using ISO 17029, ISO 14065. Now that's a very loose standard. So my advice to every program owner is, please write down requirements, additional requirements to 17029 and 14065. If you don't do that, you are in trouble. Take it from me. From my experience of 20 years now in this field, you are heading for trouble because those standards are very loose. So as a program owner, if you're not writing additional requirements, especially for accreditation bodies themselves, I have seen accreditation bodies who qualify their assessors based on having done a 3-day training on 1729. I thought it was nonsense, but it's happening right now. Since you are not writing any requirements for accreditation body assessors at all. If you're not writing requirements, you'll get assessors like this. So what do you expect when they go into the field and judge validation verification bodies? You'll not get nothing. So that is the problem. The big elephant in the room, which nobody talks about, is the model itself. I'm a project owner. I'm undertaking a project for emission reduction, and I invite you as a third-party validation verification body to come and validate my project and verify my project, and I pay you for that service. So what are you? Are you monitoring me or you're a service provider? This inherent conflict, we are not even talking about it because this is the most convenient model. Everybody recognizes word over this is being used. But I'll refer you to a paper done by the Nobel laureate Esther Duflo on truthfulness of third-party audits. Please go and read that paper for yourself, and then you'll recognize. So somebody needs to break this link. Can, for example, a program owner decide that I will decide which validation verification body will go. You submit the project to me, and I'll break the link of the you paying the validation verification body. Can somebody do that? Unless you do that, I think we will go on writing rules after rules, and Rohit will go on complaining. Rules after rules are being written, but they're not getting the outcomes. You will not get the outcomes. Thank you.
Can I come in on this?
Yeah, please.
So these are excellent points, right, on accreditation and on the business model itself. As a consequence of what Anton was indicating as the World Bank bringing together the full range of ecosystem participants, we've identified not just the payment model that you talked about, which is separating the hiring of VVBs from project owners to potentially standards and doing it in a manner that is not subjective but is random at the most for appropriately accredited VVBs. So the first element of your accreditation is something that we've taken over with INAB and the effort to try to create the linkages between the standards and accredited bodies appropriately defined and held liable in service standards. That's the first one. Yeah, and I'll point you to the report so that you can hopefully help us strengthen it and make it much more focused, because this is just a roadmap of what we need to address in the next 6 months. But the idea that the project entity does not hire the VVB and that moves to the standard and that is done in a random manner or a more objective manner is one of the fundamental recommendations. The other is that the fees are not based on tons issued, but on the basis of complexity of the methodology, a flat fee based approach, so that there is no incentive for the standard to issue more credits than, whether that is being done or not is a different issue. I am just saying eliminate that perception of that conflict. And there are similarly about 7-8 recommendations looking at the full ecosystem and identifying who's doing what, and then looking at the overlaps, the gaps, and the conflict of interest to identify systemic changes that are necessary. It's gone through a process of a dozen meetings of more than 40 stakeholder groups convened by the bank in order to try to identify what the challenges are. And, perhaps I would again, towards the end, we can, I point you to that report and would love to get more specific, given your experience, which is very, very clear from your intervention. We'd love to have you provide us even more specific details on how we could improve and identify more systemic weaknesses, which we We don't want elephant in the room, elephants in the room. We would love to address all these challenges and, as I said, continuously improve based on experiences. There are, that would be the overall approach that we would like to follow.
Anton, you wanted to say something, yeah.
Yeah, just very briefly, really thank you for honing in one of the issues in the markets and being so precise about the issues that we face. I mean, this is a crucial element of the puzzle, I think, verification and accreditation. So, and I think programs understand that, and I think there is movement in the market. So for in the Integrity Council's requirement, we have so in addition to everything that CORSIA requires, in addition to that, we also have some rules around accreditation and performance review by the program of the VVBs, and whether, you know, rules around whether performance reviews are prepared, how often that happens, whether poor performance is reported to the accreditation body, you know, the elements around that. But we know that more needs to be done in that space, and that more needs to be done with it relating to the model, the business model there as well. So one of the Chandra mentioned the continuous improvement work programs, and one of them, which will start its work very soon, is actually focused specifically on VVBs and on what more we can do in that space. So it would be very useful to get your inputs as well. So yeah, it's important that we have people who are laser focused on these particular issues and have expertise. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for raising that.
Right. I mean, that's quite insightful. And to be very honest, what I feel is probably that we'll have to have some sort of standardization in all the processes, which would probably take care of the issues like the registries choosing the VVBs, provided whatever they charge is also standardized from that point of view. And beyond that, yes, we'll have to have some modularity available to ensure that, as Sinaji rightly said, that the projects which complex methodologies or probably which take a longer gestation period should be appropriately awarded. In addition to the norms becoming incrementally complex and stringent, rather than the actual stock take being taken decades apart, and then coming out with a verdict on whether a project is actually contributing to the environment or not. Now, having said that, Rohit Kumar, what do you think would be the outcome of the Article 6 getting a nod from the parties, specifically from the point of view from funding being increased to poorer countries? Though I should not call it poor countries, but I should probably refer to it as Global South, because most of the projects that get benefited out from these fundings are from Global South. And you being one of the forefront leaders from one of such countries, what do you think is going to happen, and what is your expectation?
Yeah. So I'd like to add a few points. The last discussion was very good. So I thought that I will present the industry perspective, because I am very happy to share that industry has taken very proactive step in decarbonization in most of the countries. And I would like to give some insights about India perspective. All the major companies in India has decided net zero goal. All the major companies has also decided how to measure the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. I've seen the experience that they have started to measure all those emissions activities and also red flag those activities where they have to do certain correction in certain year time. And since we talk about decarbonization, since we talk about methodologies, since we talk about labelings, I'm sure that we are taking steps, very collaborative approach to taking all the stakeholder active participations in this Global South. That is essential to develop any carbon market and labeling in the world. And but idea is that when we talk about any industry about carbon credit and carbon funding, this is a really complex world, and a lot of complexity is there. They don't know how to handle the project. They don't know how to integrate the technologies. They don't know how to register the project. And costing of the project registry audit issuance is extremely high. They're not sure that when we do registration of the project, will they able to get the credit or not? because that is, again, extra funding for those companies and organizations are there. So I think that we are really make this market very complex right now from the industry perspective. This market has immense potential and opportunity for world to decarbonize, but we need to understand that who has to decarbonize? The industry has to decarbonize. What the industry perspective is there? What the global south perspective is there? That need to be integrated in all the systems and methodology. Apart from that, I'd like to give some insights that in the COP26, we have decided that country has pledged to mobilize $100 billion per year in the climate funding by 2020. Things are not moving in this direction. So when we talk about carbon funding, when we talk about decarbonization, net zero, and without funding, without supporting to industry, is a big question mark all around the world. But we also seen that there's a COVID era where the industry has suffered largely, and they're not able to get enough support and funding from the government side because all the funding has go to the different direction. Apart from that, the global scenario, what is happening in the world is actually market is really spoiled and price of credit has been fall down directly, very badly in this global south carbon projects. And we also seen that some of the labeling happened recently where the solar projects credit has been fall down drastically. So are we taking support from the industry? Are we taking industry in the right path? Are we collaborating with industry in this direction? This is a question mark. And I'm sure that if you're not able to join hand with the industry, we not know the concern of the industry, we don't know the decarbonization process of the industry, this market will take some time to grow. Even if we'll have more labeling, even if more methodology, more complexity, it's not going to help. But the funding is a big, one of the most important area because without fund, industry can't be decarbonized. Without fund, MSME can't think about decarbonization process. And large number of global south has large number of MSMEs. And even the MSME, the small projects, unfortunately, cannot register for carbon credit. We need to aggregate the project. As the project ROI is not going to meet viable for those companies or small companies to get the carbon credit. While we see that there's some positive changes are happening, and I'm very happy to that COP29, we have decided Article 6.4 finalizations. This is really encouraging for the country like India and the global south. And apart from that, we also realize that green bonds are there and sustainability linked loans are there. Blended finance are there. All these things are gaining momentum. I'm sure all these things are going to create a backbone for a strong carbon market. I would like to give some India perspective in a scenario that how India is well aware about the carbon market. Recently, we have also launched a green credit program, which is much beyond the carbon market. It really talks about the completely environmental goal and benefits. We also launched a life campaign by Honorable Prime Minister Mr. Modi last time, which really talk about the lifestyle for environment. I'm sure that all this activity is going to help decarbonize much faster. Apart from that, only registering and issuing the credit from the carbon credit projects. But the finances is the major concern I'd like to highlight again. And these finances need to be done faster if we want a faster approach for decarbonization in this planet.
Right. Specifically for the small scale projects that you mentioned, probably they would not even be taking the advantage of carbon credits, specifically from the point of view of the expenses that are to be made in developing such projects to gain from carbon financing. But yes, the modularity that we were talking about on discussing or deciding how the expenses would be depending on the complexity of the projects, probably another point that can be taken into consideration can be the impact. So suppose if a project makes a greater impact, but is quite simple in nature, probably the expenses to be incurred for such projects to get registered can be lowered down, and then probably it would make even much more sense. The gentleman has to say something. I'll just come back to you, sir. Just give me a moment. Before we do that, I'll just move on to Mr. Chandrasekhar Sinha. And so this is a discussion that we were having a couple of days back as well in India. But for the interest of everyone, I would like to ask you again that how do you feel that technology can be leveraged to ensure that the transition or between the voluntary and compliance market as far as the credit flow or the finance flow is concerned is streamlined? And what technological advancements do you suggest for this to happen at a much faster pace?
I assume, Siddhant, you're talking about the market infrastructure and the technology. Okay. So I think one of the key elements for us has been to move towards creating a safe, interoperable digital infrastructure, which would serve a much more transparent and high integrity carbon markets, moving towards more digital monitoring, reporting, verification, to registries which ideally, I talked about the infrastructure roadmap that we put out. Ideally, you separate a issuance registry with a transaction registry and have clear liability, because if the market scales, the current independent programs, just to as an example, the independent programs are all not for profits. And imagine large amount of carbon assets in billions of dollars being held in registries operated by not-for-profits as being a constraint to potentially monetizing those credits in the financial sector. So separating issuance registry with where transactions can take place, I think is another important element of it. And digitizing that and potentially, digitizing the carbon asset itself and allowing it to be available in digitized form, fractionalized, would potentially increase dramatically the liquidity and the depth of the market, along with the speed of transactions. So if you have digital MRV, the settlement would not be, 12 months, 14 months after verification reports have been submitted, but would potentially be at a much faster speed. So the use of Earth observation systems, smart meters, IoTs linked together in a digital monitoring system potentially has the ability to reduce costs, increase speed of settlement, increase transparency, reduce the risk of fraudulent manipulation, whole range of benefits that you can talk about. And the World Bank, in partnership with other multilaterals, have formed something called the Digital for Climate Coalition for building each part of that ecosystem to be totally interoperable, so that you have modular solutions which could be integrated at the country level to provide the infrastructure that would truly be ready for a market which would be in billions of dollars rather than tens of millions of dollars. So that's, Siddhant, I assume that was the direction in which you were taking. Okay.
Right, fair enough. I'll come to Anton for the next question, but before I do that, Anilji had to say something, and we can have one more question from the audience. I'll come to you, sir. Just give me a moment.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Just wanted to respond to your reference to simple projects and cost of verification, etc. In carbon registry, we have decided to develop a system of certifying individual verifiers for smaller projects and simple projects based on an international standard. So let's say, I think that's a solution which might bring down costs rather than using VVBs for a certain category of projects. We could use individual verifiers if they can demonstrate that competence to validate or verify. That'll be much cheaper than having validation verification agencies coming in. Let's see.
Much appreciated, sir. And democratization of all costs probably is the fundamental of how the market should work. And probably carbon credits fundamentally were put in place for the same reason, so that the costs across the globe for implementation of projects for projects to generate outcomes which can mitigate climate change, so to say, can be democratized. Having said that, sir, you had a question.
Thank you so much. My name is Jigmitanjan. I work for Fauna and Flora. We are an international organization based in UK. We develop forest carbon projects to help communities or government manage their protected areas or conservation areas. And I'm a forest carbon specialist. My question is related to Article 6.4 or 6.2. And what I feel is the need of the hour is forest climate finance to make sure that we manage our forests or conserve our forests, and we need all kind of support, be it compliance, be it voluntary carbon market. And the recent endorsement of Article 6.4 is like very good news. But my question is like, I come from some kind of trying to understand myself, like how would that affect the voluntary carbon market? We see the under Article 6.2, there are already like plans to use voluntary carbon market method standards available, but how does it affect the Article 6.4? Because 6.4, it seems that they would be developing their own methodologies. So should ICVCM or standards or like World Bank or IETA kind of push Article 6.4 supervisory board to consider already existing methodologies? They just need to say we would endorse gold standard or we would endorse ICVCM approved methodologies, and like that would kind of bring together what we call like integration of VCM to the compliance market. So I would like to hear your views on this. Thank you so much.
Right.
Perhaps I'll take the first shot at this. What the supervisory body of Article 6.4 did is to present two new standards for guiding the future of Article 6.4, right? One was a general standard that every methodology or new submission would have to do, and the second is for removals. What would be the standards that, what would be the requirements that a proposed new methodology would need to follow? So very clearly, Article 6.4 has that provision now. Yesterday, I think today is Saturday. So yesterday, ICVCM approved arteries and whereas JNR and VM40, I think, right, as eligible methodologies for core carbon principles. If you look in parallel to the development, what Singapore announced was the playbook, soon to be called the protocol for the use of Article 6.2 as far as Singapore is concerned, the use of Vera and gold standard and potentially ART as eligible standard. So what you're seeing is a convergence into both bilateral and multilateral mechanisms under Article 6, both 6.2 and 6.4, converging towards utilizing comparable approaches. I think what is important to recognize is Article 6.4 through the standards that it is recommending is trying to integrate the consideration of a NDC into the methodology, which typically has not been fully integrated yet into many of the independent standards. And that's where some additional work is required by the independent standards to ensure that considerations of NDC are integrated into the program standard, the independent program standards, the way Article 6.4 is trying to ensure that the baselines are constructed in a manner that is consistent with the NDC.
Right. Anton, would you want to have a take at this, or should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I can be brief. So first, just to supplement what Chandra just said about our decision on red, it's VM48, GNR, and the trees crediting level component of our trees red. So we're finishing up the other pieces of that methodology in the coming months, and that's going to be the decision is going to be made soon. Yeah, but really on the relationship between Article 6 and the VCM, I think really so clearly Article 6.4 is there for those who want to directly sort of access the UN system and the UN crediting mechanism. But in 6.2, parties may be applying different approaches, and one of them is to use the existing infrastructure in the voluntary market. I mean, especially if these parties have confidence in the integrity and the processes and the methodologies that are there for them to use. And I mean, it's a virtuous cycle potentially, and the spaces are the same, right? The project developing space is going to be the same. The buyers are often going to be the same. So we're not really talking about segregated markets. We're talking about a conversion really. And it's important that well, at least from our perspective, that the integrity requirements are more or less uniform across all these worlds, or at least above a certain threshold. So that's why we're working out very closely as well with the space to make sure that there's alignment.
Right, fair enough. We'll stay with you, Anton. And I would want to understand on what are the next critical steps that ICVCM is looking forward to, because as we already discussed, that this is a continuous process, and so probably your approach would be two-pronged. One would be to make incremental improvements on the existing decisions that you have taken, and also encompassing new parameters there. So can you please shed some light on that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, first of all, we have to finish up the actual assessment process and finish up the assessing the programs and the methodologies that have applied to us. So we hope to sort of finish that up in the coming months, and most of the big decisions that people are expected this year. And we will continue assessing programs as they apply, because new programs appear and there's a lot of innovation in the market. We see smaller, innovative, more sort of interesting programs coming in, and that requires a lot of attention as well. But yeah, the sort of big next step is this iterative process of continuous improvement, and we are going to have a next iteration of the assessment framework at some point in about 2 years' time. And by that point, we will accumulate the work of these continuous improvement work programs, which deal with Paris alignment, corresponding adjustments, small scale projects, actually, digital MRV, permanence, sustainable benefits, all those jurisdictional approaches, all these elements going to fit in. Plus, we're going to have the practice of the CCPs arriving in the market, and we will see how that unfolds. So it's really important for us to have that all into consideration, work on that, and then sort of in a couple of years introduce the new framework, which is very important to take the market with us, because innovation is happening very quickly in this market, and we have to take that all in as it comes.
Fair enough. The entire market or the entire space is at a very nascent stage. If you look at the history of this market as compared to anything else that has been present in the markets currently. Having said that, I'd just circle back to Luis, and there has been increasing evidence that action on climate change, whether compulsory or voluntary, does not impede economic growth, but may actually enhance it, as we are to race to create a clean 21st century economy. Do you think that this view is accurate?
Yeah, actually, this view has been changing over the years. I think there was a lot of fear first from countries, on how the climate change policies will be impacting actually the economic development. But I think we're learning from that, and we are actually integrating the climate change policies into the economic frameworks. Even the agendas, international agendas, the G20 agenda, the Davos Forum, everything is now connected. The biodiversity COP. So we are also converging in this process. That everything is being actually under the Paris Agreement, independently if you are speaking about economic policies or biodiversity. So I think that we are actually quite moving in this direction. But I think that here the point to consider is the speed at which we are actually moving. Every country has their own national circumstances, and are actually willing to have a just transition. We know, common but differentiated responsibilities. There are some countries that have more responsibility over others, on the impacts of climate change, and this is actually part of the equation and part of the difficulties on the negotiations. But it's a way of actually trying to include the financial flows into climate change policies, and not speaking on actual NDCs, but actually on the way to net zero. The climate change policies are actually a way also to move in the economy. So I think this is where we are going. But it depends also on the emission profiles of the different countries. No, if countries are more based on the energy sector or on the agricultural sector, no, that will also differentiate now the impacts that the economic policies will be having on the economy. No, and this is maybe why we are moving so slow. No, because until and there is not economic growth, no, based on the climate change policies. So this will be moving forward, no.
Right. Fair enough. I would come back to Mr. Chandrasekhar Sinha on the next question, and probably this is more of a chicken or egg question. So, there have been a lot of conversations on the investments not being optimal just because the procedures have not been set in the right way as far as mitigation of climate change is concerned. And then there has been a view that we should first standardize the process and then do the investments. So, how do you suggest is the better way to go about it? Should we standardize all the process and procedures for calculating and computing the impact and then move ahead with investments, or should we move ahead with the investments and then graduate or mature our thoughts on the assessment processes gradually?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Is the question that you design an investment based on carbon revenues or
No, right. So the question specifically is, see, today the confusion that has been created or greenwashing as it has been termed is attributed to the fact that the assessment of the projects has not been done in a correct manner, whereas the investments on those projects had already been done. So there can be a contrasting view wherein you may suggest that we should move ahead with investments only once we are sure that all the processes are standardized and fully acceptable. So where do you stand on that? Do you suggest that investments should be made after thorough, justification and suggestions on processes, or is it a gradual process in which we mature and understand the flaws and then improve upon it?
I think in the earlier version of the carbon market, this was a prior consideration question, right? I think the concept of prior consideration needs to shift in the context of the Paris Agreement and in the context of contribution claims that carbon markets or activities, mitigation activities, either contribute to a country's NDC and therefore are retained within the accounting system of the host country in which the project is taking place, versus the quantified amount of emission reductions are correspondingly adjusted and go to another country for accounting. So in those kind of consideration, the idea of additionality, which is behind the concept of prior consideration, is no longer relevant. And I know that's a controversial statement to make, but I'll make it in any case. That when countries have a commitment and have an NDC which is akin to, or will be once the NDCs are harmonized, akin to a cap, then either you are within a cap, you're transferring emission reductions, or you're contributing to the emission reductions of the country to stay within the cap. And then therefore the idea of prior consideration is no longer, we should no longer be valid. And it'll take a little bit of time to get a consensus on this approach and move away from the need for prior consideration. But this is certainly the direction of travel that I think would be relevant.
Right, fair enough, sir. And before we move on to the audience for the last 5 minutes, I have just one more question for Mr. Rohit Kumar. So, since we are discussing on the viability of carbon credits as a key to net zero, do you think that we can ever reach net zero without market instruments like carbon credits?
So it's a good question, I think, Siddhant. We were discussing it earlier also. But if you like to reach net zero, I think carbon market has to play very important role. And I think carbon market has the potential to measure and impact and finally deliver to the environment what we promised as a net zero goal by 2050 or 2070 or 2060 different countries. But at the same time, we understand that a large number of funding support is required to Global South, especially in the solar projects, because every projects we need funding, then the process of decarbonization starts. But this is a good cause of debate also, that without carbon market, can we achieve net zero? So as per my understanding, we can definitely achieve net zero without carbon market. But the big challenges are ahead, that we are not able to meet the 1.5-degree target, what we promised, as per my understanding. And large number of technology support is required. Technology integrations are required. Large number of funding is required in the stage 1. So that is another challenge that we have. And apart from that, the lot of complexity will be there all around, and it is not will be available for cost effective for multiple countries to work in this direction. So I'm sure that without carbon market, it is extremely difficult to achieve net zero, because carbon market is going to shape up the world in the right direction, and carbon market will shape up the business competitiveness in the coming ways. Carbon market is going to shape up a sustainable development of all activities what we're planning for this planet and give back to planet. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So this was pretty much it from my side as far as the questions are concerned. I'll now open it for the audience for the one last time, if there are any questions or suggestions. And just to make things a little more interesting, if we get good suggestion here, we have one carbon neutral certificate that we can give out to the participant from the audience. Okay, thank you. I suppose the certificate goes back to my home with me. Having said that, thank you everyone for being a part of this discussion. Best wishes to everyone, and thank you once again to all the panelists. Have a good day.